Duval Rundown is brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Same-day injury care, no ER lines. Now here's your host, Gus Logue.
Good morning, and good afternoon, rather. I'm still getting mixed up on the 9:04 versus noon start, but thank you to everyone who's joining here today for episode 16 of Duval Rundown. My name is Gus Logue. I'm joined today by Taylor Daw of 1010XL, who is a big Chicago Bears fan, has a lot of family in that area, and so she's basically a Chicagoian, or however you would say it, I think, to talk about the Bears and the Caleb Williams, Jacksonville's matchup in Week 6 coming up. But first, as we start every show, we're going to do a little bit of Jaguars trivia. The Jaguars have won 9 straight games against the Colts in Jacksonville, which is the longest home win streak against a single opponent in franchise history. Who started at quarterback for the Jaguars the last time they lost to the Colts in Jacksonville? Was it A, Blaine Gabbert, B, Chad Henne, C, Blake Bortles, or D, Ricky Bobby? Let people think for a couple seconds. The correct answer is B, Chad Henne. But the Colts went up 30-0 at halftime, and so Blake Bortles entered the game for his first career action, and then his first career start was the following week. And so a little bit of a trick question, I guess, because Blake Bortles did play in that game, but Chad Henne started the last time that the Colts beat the Jaguars in Jacksonville, which was back in 2014. But we're not here to talk about the Colts win, as great as it was. We are actually here to just jump forward to London, because that's where the team will be traveling as soon as today, honestly, because of Hurricane Milton that's coming into the Jacksonville area. So hopefully everyone stays safe on that front. But yeah, we're going to talk Bears because there's no one better to talk about it than Taylor Daw. So Taylor, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thanks. I'm good. I'm a bit tired. I just got back into Jacksonville last night from Chicago, and what turned into what was supposed to be a 3-hour layover in Philly turned to us being there for 11 hours. So it was kind of a bit of a hot mess, but I'm home, so we're good.
So how was the game? Because you went, right?
Fantastic. Yeah. I mean, weather was perfect. Obviously, Bears get a big win. And it's also like, I guess to other people around the league didn't matter, but because of the whole like Bryce Young, DJ Moore trade with the Panthers and everything that the Bears got from the Panthers for that trade, this game was like a little bit extra. You could tell DJ Moore was just like on a different level as kind of more of like a revenge type game. But yeah, it was fantastic. Everything went the way that I wanted. I was obviously like following the Jags on my phone too. I was like, okay, I think I might have a double good day, which is fun.
Double win for Taylor for sure.
Yeah.
Which is probably pretty rare, especially
Yes.
with the way the Jags season is going this year. But the Bears are 3-2, and we've seen Caleb Williams grow a lot over just the first 5 weeks of the season after being picked first overall out of USC. And so what did you see from Caleb on Sunday and in recent weeks kind of be compared to what he looked like in the season opener?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have kind of started working the last couple of weeks with the Bears. Number one, the first 2 weeks, I was expecting it. Some people kind of had major freakouts because people expect everyone to be like CJ Stroud right away, kind of how he looked last year initially. But I was, in my head, I was always like, you got a rookie quarterback. There's a new offensive coordinator. DeAndre Swift status. You had a new running back. You had 2 new offensive linemen. You have 2 new wide receivers in Keenan Allen and Rome. So there's a lot of pieces that kind of had to start fitting together and figure out what works and what didn't. So the first couple of weeks was almost just like this massive experiment of trying to figure out how to get this offense going. There was virtually no run game, so I do think that affected the pass game and what Caleb was able to do even more because we couldn't get anything on the ground whatsoever, and it was kind of all put into Caleb's hands very early. I mean, the guy threw 52 times in week 2, his second start in the NFL. He threw over 50 times, which is just crazy. But what we've seen start to work, number one, the run game. DeAndre Swift has really kind of started figuring out his flow of things. They've started using Roschon Johnson a little bit more, but in like short yardage downs or in the red zone when you're on the goal line type of situation, which is what everybody's been thinking he should have been doing. And Shane Waldron was just kind of trying to test that out, I think. So that's one thing that started working. Another one is Caleb's just getting way more comfortable, and you can tell his anticipation, his being able to like go through his progressions. Most of his last couple touchdowns have all been on like the third read. And that just kind of shows that he's able to work through things and still not panic, not leave the pocket too early, which maybe we saw in the first couple weeks a little bit more. And so he just looks more comfortable, which I think is part of it. Once you get more NFL reps, that's a piece that comes along with it. But I just feel like they're still in this finding the offense mode. It's not like we feel like it's completely solved at this point. But I think one of the biggest positives is you mentioned the progression. If you just go through some of Caleb's numbers from week one. So week one, his passer rating was 55.7, and he had a negative 0.39 EPA per dropback. Since then, it went up. It was like 51-37 week 2. Then against the Colts, it went up to an 80.8 passer rating. Then in week 4, it went up to a 106. And then last week it was a 120. This last game, it was a 126. So it's just that slow and steady progress that you want to see out of a rookie quarterback, I feel like.
For sure. So you've said that both Caleb Williams and DeAndre Swift have improved. I'm interested in how much of that is just them settling into their new environments and how much of that is related to a possible boost in offensive line play, especially because we've seen the Jaguars, like the past 2 weeks, their offense has really started to click, and especially this past week against Indianapolis. And a big part of that is the run game or the blocking by the offensive line. Yeah. And so is it a similar story up in Chicago?
I do think it's part of that. The interesting thing is that 2 of the supposed to be starters, and Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins, Nate didn't play last week or on Sunday. Tevin Jenkins ended up getting hurt and left the game, and it was probably his best game of the year so far. He hurts his ankle, leaves the game, and we have a backup come in, Bill Murray, who took over for him, and then we had a guy named Matt Pryor take over for Nate Davis. And so it's kind of interesting because it's backups playing, but it's the best the offensive line has looked all week. So was that just kind of lucky because it's against the Panthers, and honestly, how much defense do they have up front? I don't know. Or have they found a recipe for this is starting to work? But I do think that the last 2 weeks, the line definitely has helped DeAndre Swift. I do think some of it is Shane Waldron, though. I think Shane Waldron was trying to use DeAndre Swift in the first couple of weeks like this, like bowling ball type up the middle running back, and he's just not that. I feel like he had so much success in Philly because Philly's line was so good, and he was able to, once he sees green, he's good and he's gone. But he's not one of those guys that are going to roll over the defensive line. So I think Shane Waldron kind of realized that, and now because of the offensive line and certain things that he's scheming up, he's able to find open field and kind of get some of these breakaways that in the first couple games, I mean, we were losing. He had, I think, like, I want to say it ended up being like negative 20 yards between the first 2 games, between like losses he had and the yards he actually had. So it was a little messy, but it seems like it's starting to figure out. But to your point, I do think it's a combination between the offensive line settling in. I do think it's a combination of Shane Waldron kind of finding the strengths and weaknesses of both Caleb and DeAndre Swift and Roschon Johnson. But then I do think part of it is too, it's a new team and they are starting to settle in and see like what works best for each person, you know?
Mm-hmm. Before we get to the defensive side of the ball, I do need to ask you about your guy, Rome Odunze, because I know you were very excited about him before the draft and throw when he landed in Chicago. And we know that DJ Moore is a great receiver, especially after he scored 2 touchdowns against his former team, the Panthers, last week. And then Keenan Allen, of course, is also kind of a living legend, even if he's missed a few games due to, is it a hamstring injury for Keenan?
Yeah, he's back now. They definitely were easing him in a little bit. You could tell because he missed 2 weeks. Then he came back and it was like very limited snaps. He looked a little bit more into the game this last weekend against the Panthers. So I would expect it to be like a full go for Keenan in London against the Jags.
So most people have heard of Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. And I guess a lot of people have also probably heard of Rome Odunze. But it's not a lot of people are tuning into every Bears game in Northeast Florida here to watch how the first round rookie is doing. So what have you seen from Rome through the first 5 weeks?
I love Odunze, and I was very vocal about wanting Rome when I just didn't think it was honestly possible. And I've shared this story so many times, but I truly thought he was going to be gone before the 9th pick. And when it said Michael Penix, I absolutely lost my mind because I was like, oh my God, like Rome Odunze just fell to the Bears, but he's fantastic. It is a little bit different. Bears don't have to use him a ton. which I think is very beneficial. I also think it was their whole plan from the time they signed Keenan Allen. I don't think Keenan Allen was some long-term answer. His contract's over after this season. I genuinely feel like they were going after Rome. I think they wanted Rome the whole time. If he fell to them, great. But I think they got Keenan as a backup plan of almost like, okay, well, if we can't get Rome Odunze in the draft, we can have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, and you still have an efficient passing game in that. But if we do get Rome, then you have Keenan to kind of help mold Rome Odunze into the player that most people think he can be, because that's one of the things I did here when the Bears traded for Keenan Allen. I talked to a lot of people with the Chargers, and they were all just kind of like, yeah, he's just one of those guys who's there to help and mentor everybody, no matter if it's a defensive player. Like, he would stay after practice and talk to the young corners and be like, this is what you did. This is what you should have done. This is how we ran this route. This is what like all of those little intricate things. So you can already tell he's like that with Rome too, which I think is beneficial. But because of that, because they have DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet, they have all of these other pieces. And we talked about DeAndre Swift, which they also have gotten him in the passing game a little bit more too. But because of all that, Rome doesn't have to be forced out there, and he doesn't have to be this massive part of the offense yet, which I think is beneficial, honestly, because he's not forced into something that he's not quite ready for. I think the flashes we've shown, he just a couple weeks ago had the 100-yard game and got a touchdown in that game, and he looked incredible. He's just one of those guys that he's open all the time. His dad has tweeted and is screenshotting all the tweets of times Rome was open and Caleb hasn't gotten him the ball. But I think that that's something, as I mentioned before, they're figuring out the strengths and weaknesses of all of these different pieces of the offense, because there are a lot of mouths to feed. And it's not a negative thing, but it does mean that sometimes DJ's going to have 100 yards, and sometimes Rome will have 100 yards, and sometimes it'll be a little more split up between all of them. Cole Kmet is a massive part of this offense, and they're not going to lose that. In week 1, Cole Kmet didn't get a single reception, and people were freaking out. And since then, Shane Waldron has started to up the ante with Cole Kmet. And since then, now Cole's like top 10 in almost every number when it comes to tight ends. So you're not going to take that away. It's such a big part of Shane Waldron's game anyways, is using multiple tight ends in his game, which Gerald Everett, too, is on the Bears. So I love Rome. I think he's fantastic. I think there's a good balance of what each of the Bears wide receivers can do, because you have DJ Moore, who is just a monster. When it comes to those yak yards, DJ's going to get the ball and get another 10, 15 yards after. Keenan's probably one of the best crisp route runners in the league. He just is one of those guys that he's so good with his feet, and he doesn't have to burn anybody. He can create that separation with just being able to, as I said, run those routes the right way and kind of juke people out a little bit. And then Rome's the full on, just like more so deep threat, contested catch, that type of guy. So you have just a good balance of guys that can do different things. And I think that's why, but it's one of those things that I don't know if any wide receiver this year is going to have like one game where all of them have 100 yards. It's going to be like DJ's game, then Rome's game, and then Keenan's game. It's going to be that type of thing.
That's kind of how I feel about the pass catching unit in Jacksonville, where it's like Engram's going to have a big game, and Kirk's going to have a big game, and Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, at this point, Brian Thomas Jr. might have a big game every game.
Yeah,
he's turning into that kind of guy. But before the season, for sure, even Gabe Davis, I thought would have a few big performances of his own. And so definitely a lot of weapons there in Chicago. For the Jaguars, I feel like the key to beating them is just to be able to take advantage of the offensive line injuries and just lack of continuity, I guess, and be able to apply pressure to a rookie quarterback playing in his first international game. Because if they give Caleb any sort of time with those pass catchers that you just went over, then as we've seen all season from Jacksonville, their secondary will not be able to hold up for long. And so to move over to the defensive side, and if anyone has any questions for Taylor, by the way, who are watching live, feel free to ask something in the comment section. But Taylor, I feel like the general consensus for Matt Eberflus is that it's still kind of to be determined if he's going to be a good head coach, but he can definitely coach the defensive side of the ball. And the Steelers or the Bears are one of the best defenses in the league right now, and they haven't even allowed more than 21 points to a team in like almost a full calendar year. So that is definitely a dominant unit and one to be reckoned with. And so if you can point to one thing, what would it be to like just what makes this defense so good?
I think that the obvious answer I want to say is the secondary. The corners, Jalen Johnson, easy, one of the best corners in the league. I feel like people don't pay enough attention to Jalen Johnson. He's just so good. Maybe some of it is because he honestly, in certain times, just gets avoided. People just completely avoid Jalen Johnson. But now what they have to worry about is Tyreek Stevenson and Kyler Gordon, who are both young, are just getting better and better. So they can't even really do that anymore because then you have two other corners that are able to take advantage of the offense too. And that's kind of what happened against the Panthers. They weren't targeting Jalen much whatsoever. And then Tyreek Stevenson just completely shut down all of their receivers. And he's just kind of at that level too. He's out of Miami and he spent a year at Georgia and then went to Miami. And he was one of the guys that I heard good things and bad things about, but he's ended up being fantastic so far. So I think that's the obvious thing, is to talk about them. But I almost want to point to the defensive line, who was probably one of the biggest concerns in this offseason, because they had Montez Sweat on one side, but they didn't have any pass rush on the other side whatsoever. And so everyone was like, okay, well, here we go again, another year of just having to count on Montez Sweat, who everyone can double team, and then you can't get much more outside of that. But it's been surprisingly actually a pretty good defensive front, which I think is helping the secondary even more. Javon Dexter out of Florida is having a monster year. He's been really, really good in his last 9-10 games. Took him a little bit to get going, 12 games last year where we were like, okay, this pick maybe isn't working out. All of a sudden he turned up the heat and he's creating pressure. He has 4 sacks on the season so far. He plays 3 tech most of the time, but they will move him outside occasionally. And so he's creating all of that pressure from the inside, which obviously helps your outside guys. We know that in Jacksonville. That's the reason you brought Eric Armstead here, I thought, but then they started putting him on the end. But when you're talking about that, and then Andrew Billings, probably someone who, if I said that name, people have no idea who he is, but he has the most pressures of a defensive tackle in the league so far. He's just one of these guys who, a big monster guy, don't know how he has, honestly, the get off that he does, because he's just so big. But he's able to create not so much the sacks, but those pressures and kind of creating the madness up front that ends up turning into Javon getting to the quarterback or Montez Sweat getting to the quarterback. They also went and signed a guy named Darrell Taylor right before the season started. And Darrell Taylor out of Seattle, he was playing in Seattle the last couple years. But it was almost like everyone was like, okay, he's had, I think, 8 sacks in his career through the 2-3 years. And we'll see. He'll add a sack or two. Guy's been, honestly, a monster. Every week he's making some big plays, and it's been really fun to see that. But outside of that, our secondary is even getting sacks. Kyler Gordon, the nickel corner, has gotten a couple sacks on the season. Jaquan Brisker, our safety, who may not be traveling to London, so that's something to keep an eye on. He got a concussion in this last game. Bears actually left today, and so he did not leave with the team. But if he clears concussion protocol, they said they might fly him out there for the game. So we'll see how that goes. But that is a big thing, because Jaquan Brisker is a ball hawk. He has multiple interceptions this season, multiple sacks, and he just shuts down every wide receiver that he is around in that area. So that's something to keep an eye on. But I do think it's just I want to say secondary automatically, but I think everybody knew the secondary was going to be good. So the surprise fact that the defensive line is playing so good and able to create so much pressure right now is making the secondary look even better than what we thought they were going to be.
Right. I think Seattle, I feel like they were just kind of throwing everything at the wall during the last couple of years of Pete Carroll's regime, trying to figure out what kind of defense and especially what kind of fronts would work. And so it kind of makes sense that Taylor was able to just go somewhere where there was a just specific scheme and he was able to kind of get unlocked. And so that's definitely a cool story. Definitely hearing about Dexter doing well, former Gator up in Chicago now, who's a 2nd-round pick last year. I feel like even with those performances, and then obviously Montez Sweat is there, Chicago has been kind of rumored to maybe be in the trade market to add more pass rush. So do you feel like that could still be an option, or do you think they've shown enough through the first 5 weeks that that's less of a concern?
It will be interesting, because that's what Poles did last year. He made that trade deadline in the middle of the season to go get Montez Sweat, and that's when the entire defense changed. Before that, the Bears, I think, were 23rd, 24th ranked defense. Montez Sweat came, and they became a top 10 defense in the next 2 weeks. That's just how big. We call it the Sweat effect, because that's just what he brought to Chicago almost immediately, just because he helps the guys around him. He's able to create so much, and doesn't even have to do a ton, honestly. I think that he didn't even have a sack this last game, but everyone else was getting the sacks because Montez can take those double teams and kind of make some other things happen. But it is something we're keeping an eye on. The one thing about Ryan Poles is he does not like to trade for players that won't sign a new contract with the Bears. So last year when they got Montez Sweat, everyone was like, this is crazy. His contract's done. You're giving I'm trying to remember. I think we gave up a fourth. I can't remember. But they're like, oh, you gave up a 4th round pick for Montez Sweat, and we only even get him for half a season. Little did everyone know Ryan Poles already had a new contract, and Montez Sweat had already agreed to it. They were just waiting to officially sign it. And so that's happened multiple times in Ryan Poles' tenure in Chicago. He has been probably the best GM we've had, maybe ever, to be completely honest, or at least in a very long time. Some of these things that he's been able to do, like Matthew Judon, we knew they were in the running for a Judon in this offseason, but he wouldn't sign a new contract before he came to the Bears. So Ryan Poles was like, I'm just not doing it. So we will see. I wouldn't be surprised if he did, just because I think he would know that if you add some other stud defensive end on the other side, let's say the Bears are still, because our bye's in, I think, week 7. So at that point, it's after the London game, actually. Yeah. So week 7, we have the bye week. So maybe he'll feel through that bye and see how things are looking. But the defense, like you said, they're already playing really well, and it's without having another end. So I think it's something to keep an eye on. But if somebody gets hurt, if Darrell Taylor, DeMarcus Walker, or Sweat get hurt, it could drastically decline fast, because that's pretty much what they have.
Do you think that there's any other positions on the team that could be in either like sell or buy spots at the deadline? Just because I feel like in general, trade deadline talk for the NFL is a little bit overhyped, because there's rarely as many action or trades as we hope or think will happen. But for the Bears, like, Ryan Poles has shown to be very aggressive. I mean, in general, but especially at the trade deadline too. And I think a big part of that is because he's been having quarterbacks on rookie contracts, so it gives them a little bit more flexibility to like go make splash moves. But Caleb is still just a rookie, and so he still kind of has that ability. So again, like, are there any other positions besides the defensive line that you think Poles could be taking a look at in the next month?
The one thing that people keep saying is maybe offensive line. The center position is still a bit of a question in Chicago. They went and they signed 2 in the offseason. Coleman Shelton, which was kind of just whatever. Everyone was like, all right, cool. He's been all right. He's been a backup, but he's been solid when he's had to come in. And then Ryan Bates, who was actually Mitch Morse's backup in Buffalo, but he was more of like a swing guy between all of the interior. Those two had battled it out through all of camp of who's going to have that center position. And so far, Coleman Shelton technically won it. Hasn't looked very good, but then Ryan Bates got hurt. And so now it seems like they might put Ryan Bates at center. We'll see. It's kind of like this back and forth. But I do think if they made any splash move, it would be in that interior somewhere. Where there were some rumors of, will they send Keenan Allen to the Chiefs and try and get one of their interior guys, something like that. I don't know if Ryan Poles would do something so drastic unless he's staring at this team and is saying, one interior guy could change this entire offense. And if that's the case, then I could see him doing something like that, because he's a former offensive lineman. So he knows the importance of the offensive line and how drastically that can change things, especially like you pointed to earlier. If that's some of the issues when it comes to not being able to run consistently and some of those other things, maybe that's the one other thing that I could see him doing. But I don't see him getting rid of Keenan, by the way. That was just some other people saying that. I don't know if he would full on trade Keenan Allen. I know.
That's just like the rumors of the Panthers trading away Deontay Johnson. It's like, it doesn't make any sense for a guy that they went out of their way to trade for in the offseason to then turn around and trade him away a few months later. Yeah, I don't get that. So that's an interesting rumor, though, just because obviously the Chiefs, even if they had an impressive win last night on Monday Night Football, they could probably use some more juice. And I actually like the Coleman Shelton signing just because he had a pretty nice season last year for the Rams. But it is always hard to tell how players are going to perform when they're taken out of such a great ecosystem like Matt McVay's offense. Yeah. And so Sean McVay, right? Sean McVay. Where did that come from? And so just to wrap up here, Taylor, what are your expectations for the game? I don't expect you to give us a score prediction on Tuesday, but just how do you see this game turning out between the Bears and the Jaguars in Week 6?
It's honestly so hard to predict, Gus, because I feel like you finally saw this last week what Jags offense can look like. But can they do that consistently? And it seems like Evan Ingram, I feel like we're getting closer to Evan Ingram coming back. I think immediately that changes things. And how much I think that alters the offense and what they can and can't do very quickly. I think the one thing that's going to make or break this game is the run game on each side of the ball. I think that we talked about Bears defense. Bears defense has the second best passing defense in the league. Their run defense is like 14th, so like middle of the pack. But they have moments where you're like, man, this like they look really good, but they get kind of worn down as the games go. So some of the running backs are able to kind of pick things up. Like Jonathan Taylor had his best game of the season against the Bears. And before the Bears game, he couldn't run at all. So I think on both sides, when it comes to, and we've seen Tank Bigsby's just been fantastic lately, which I feel like it's been really fun to watch that. And so if Tank can really get going, like we saw Tank this last weekend, and the Bears struggle against being able to stop him, that's going to, or they have to focus on that more. That's going to open obviously more opportunities for Trevor, especially if Evan's out there. And then in reverse, like the Bears have to be able to run the ball against the Jags because it's proven the last 2 weeks when DeAndre Swift is able to get going, that's when Caleb really starts cooking. So it's going to be interesting, but I do think it's going to come down to the run and who can run the ball better, and whoever can run the ball better, I feel like will end up winning the game. I think it's literally going to be able to come down to that. When you go through, both of the teams have like third down struggles. We know the Jags, we've talked about it a million times, but it's just something that when you watch the Jags red zone and their third downs are really, really bad. And so I put some of the numbers. So like Bears, when it comes to the the red zone and then the third down percentage. So red zone percentage for the Jags is 44.44% right now, and their third downs is 25.93. Like that has to get better for Jacksonville. We've talked about that. Going back to let's go back to that Niners game last season. It felt like after that game, things drastically changed when it came to them being able to get things going in those third downs and in the red zone. And part of that is running ball. That's kind of why I think it is important. But the Bears in the red zone actually have a 61.54% in the red zone, but their third down percentage only 33.82. So both of these teams struggle when it comes to third downs. Bears are a good bit better in the red zone. But I think that it's going to boil down to whoever runs the ball better. I truly just think it's going to come down to that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Kind of my thinking was just it's going to be a battle of the trenches, and whoever wins the trenches is going to win. Because I talked about how if Caleb Williams has too much time in the pocket earlier, then he's going to exploit Jacksonville's secondary without Tyson Campbell, even though Darnell Savage did return last week to the nickel spot and had a good game. But for the run game too, absolutely. It's going to be all about like just winning the early downs and winning in the trenches and just getting either Caleb Williams or Trevor Lawrence in like third and long situations just to make things more difficult on those guys. And for the Jags specifically, like the Bears is a way, way tougher test for them in terms of compared to the Colts. For like the Caleb Williams is a huge upgrade over Joe Flacco, and then the Colts, like the Bears secondary might be the best in the league and the Colts secondary might be the worst in the league. And so there's a huge gap there, kind of like off the ball for the Jaguars between their opponents. But the trenches are still, I think, winnable for Jacksonville. And so it's going to come down to that. And so, Taylor, thank you so much for spending the time here. I know you're going to have a busy week being kind of the Bears correspondent for us at 10 So
I honestly when Bears play the Jags, it's like such a stressful week for me because like granted, I cheer for both. Everybody knows that, and I've told my story on here before. Like I was born in Jacksonville, so I still love the Jags. My whole family's just Bears fans, so I've always been kind of like drugged that way of like, okay, no, you love Chicago. But this week is always so stressful for me because like my Bears fan friends and like Bears people are like just constantly going on and on and on about Bears and Jags, and then the Jags people, I won't hear the end of it if we lose. So it's just one of those weeks where I'm like, let's get through this week. I'm done with this week.
Well, try to enjoy it as much as you can. It should be fun. 9:30 kickoff since it's over in London, but make sure to catch Taylor on Helmets and Heels from noon to 2 on 92.5 FM. And she also does a podcast for SB Nation's Windy City Gridiron. It's called Making Monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Making Monsters, right. So make sure to check out that podcast if you are like Taylor and care about both the Jaguars and the Bears. So, Taylor, thanks again for joining us and for all the insight.
Yep, thanks, Gus.
Alrighty. Before we get to our show and tell segment, we're going to have a quick break, quick sponsor read. Alrighty. The first clip I want to show is Tom Coughlin being inducted as the 7th member of the Pride of the Jaguars. This video is via Zach Goodall's Twitter/X. He covers a team for USA Today's Jaguars Wire. I think it's USA Today's. So Zach's a great follow, but I just wanted to show this video for anyone who's not at the game because it was a really cool moment for Coughlin and Jags fans.
Coach set a standard for everything he did, and then he became we because we couldn't have gotten this franchise off the ground without that standard. It was that unyielding standard of excellence that propelled the Jaguars to the AFC Championship game in only our second season, and we did it again 3 years later. Tom's love of Jacksonville and his passion for the Jaguars is as strong and deep today as ever. And Coach, it's why we, who are here with you, now stand with you as you take your rightful place in the pride of the Jaguars. And so, we initiate a new tradition in the Jaguars family. We've had all white uniforms, we've had all black uniforms, we've had all gold. But teal is our color. Teal is what binds all of us. And it's teal that runs through the veins of every Jaguar fan everywhere. And so, Coach, it's time. Join me in the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
There you go. Pretty cool moment for Tom, of course, and his whole family. We talked to Tommy McManus on Sunday's Duval Rundown show, who's a Jaguars linebacker and played under Coach Coughlin. And he was there to be part of the congratulatory committee, I guess. And so we got his perspective. And then there's a ton of Coach Coughlin, just content on 1010XL Jaguars YouTube. So make sure to go check that out if you're interested. This next clip is from CBS Sports' broadcast. It's just the post-game interview with Trevor Lawrence on the field after he won on and set a career high for passing yards on his 25th birthday.
Oh, you got me a cupcake. Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank y'all. It's very sweet. Thank you.
All right. Well, this one was a long time in coming. What was the difference today?
Man, just continue to believe. You know, we feel really good about the group we have, and obviously it hasn't clicked. Thank you, bro. Obviously it hasn't clicked first 4 weeks, but we know if we kept plugging away and just kept doing our part, doing our job, it eventually would. And today even, it wasn't easy. It's never going to be easy. It's the NFL. So I was just proud of how the group, we started off hot, and then even at the end we just finished. And that's what we've been missing the last few weeks, finish these games. So I was proud of the group.
When you talk about hot, watching you on the sideline, you were pretty fired up, a little more animated than I've seen. You said that it's about making things right. Do you feel like today you did indeed make things right?
I do. You know, I felt like, you know, I put the ball in our playmakers' hands. I was patient. Besides one play, got a little greedy to BT on the pick there. Besides that, I felt like, you know, we executed our plan how we wanted to. And it's not just me. It's the guys up front. I didn't get sacked today. I mean, those guys protected their butts off, and a lot goes into it. But yes, I feel like I did my job, and we won the game.
As you head off to London, does it feel like a different team?
It's the same team. We just got some juice that we needed. We needed a little momentum. We needed a win. We've been working hard. We got to take this and run with it.
All right, and last thing, what's the birthday celebration now?
You said what?
What's the birthday celebration?
Just got my family in town. We're gonna hang out at the house, just kick back, relax, enjoy the win. Been a long time coming, so we're gonna enjoy it.
Hey, eat the cupcake.
Yeah.
There we go.
Here's Trevor talking to media after the game via Jaguars YouTube.
So maybe to get one for the first time in a minute, yeah?
Feels good to win. Yeah, that's why you play the game. I mean, it feels great to win. It feels good just feels good for some of the hard work to pay off. Like I said, first 4 weeks not going our way. It is tough, and it's draining, honestly, when you put the time in, you put the work in, and you're not getting the results for various different reasons. So it feels good today. And like I said, it wasn't perfect. There was plenty of mistakes out there. I had some myself. I mean, it's just you just keep playing. You play 60 minutes. So it's cool when that all clicks and pays off and you get a chance to win a game like that. But it's just one game. We can't flip out over one game, but we are going to celebrate it because we've been working hard, and it's big for us, and we're going to use it to propel us.
What do we got next? Let's go to Brian Thomas Jr. in the locker room after the game. This is from 1010XL Jaguars YouTube.
You lined up in the slot, you went over to the right. Did you realize that they had messed up because there was definitely a miscommunication between the linebackers?
Yeah, when I seen him do a trigger, I thought maybe Trev had threw the ball to like somebody short, so I looked back and I seen it up in the air. I was like, that can't be right. So I realized that they made a mistake in their coverage, and I was wide open.
Brian, that was the second longest touchdown in Jaguars history. Did you know once you had it in your hand, you're like, I might outrun everybody at this point?
Yeah, I knew it. Once I caught it, I was just turning the jets on and just trying to get my Madden rate, my Madden speed bumped up a little bit.
I think they clocked you at 22 miles an hour.
Yeah.
That sound right?
That's pretty good.
This next one is going to be Cam Little talking about his game-winning field goal from Sunday. Here it is.
First game winner in your NFL career. When I say those words, what does that mean to you?
A lot, actually. To know that my head coach has trusted me to kind of go out there and hit a 48-yarder. Obviously, it's not super far distance, but as soon as we got in range, just ran out the clock and was like, yeah, he's going to go out there and do it. So to know that he has the confidence and my teammates have the confidence in me when I go out there, it's the world, and I'm just glad I can do my job and get us a win.
What did Logan say to you? What's the first thing he said?
Oh, he just was – anytime we make a field goal, Logan's the first one to yell, "Atta boy, good kick, boy." Just his Mississippi accent coming out. So he was yelling. He was excited. I was more pumped up than anything, though. Obviously, I showed a little excitement after we made it. So just a good time out there.
Can you tell us about the shirt that you wore to the stadium today?
Yeah. Do you guys –
you can pull it out. Yeah, you can pull it out for us. Yeah, please show it to us. It goes along with the intro.
Logan Cook's #1 fan, actually.
There it is. Look at that. Wow. Did you have that personally made?
I did. There's a person that kind of prints for a lot of the team's wives and family, actually. So I was like, hey, do you have a down the large so I can wear it in the stadium? And sure enough, she got it going. So good day to break. I might have to wear it every home game now.
That may be the good luck charm.
Right?
For this team, can you describe this feeling in the locker room as almost cathartic? Does it feel like the air is almost out of the balloon and in the best way possible?
Yeah. I'm going to be honest. I think even through these 4 losses that we've taken before, I don't think the locker room really lost confidence in itself during that whole time. I think everyone stuck together really close. I think there hasn't been a skip beat, and we just went out there and got the W today. All 4 quarters today, we were confident that we were going to get that W, and we went out there and improved, and we battled and stuck together. And some teams maybe not have done that after 4 losses. They would have dismantled. But this team is a strong one, and everyone is so tight-knit that this win was because how close we were, and it came down to so tight. But we relied on each other, and kind of like Coach Peterson would preach, lean on each other, and obviously went out there and got the W.
3 more clips for you, all from Doug Peterson, all from Jaguars YouTube. This first one is him talking post-game about Cam Little's kick.
You have a lot of faith in him, but I guess talk about that pressure for a rookie kicker.
It's pressure. But if you know Cam like we do, like I do, he kind of embraces that, honestly. And just an excellent kick. Happy for him, to be able to do that. I think it's the reason why we drafted him, and that's the reason why he's here. So hats off to him and the field goal team for finishing the game.
Here's Peterson talking about Tank Bigsby's performance after he recorded over 100 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns.
Got his due today, and you used him well down the road. Is that something the team's going to be moving forward to instead of moving to Travis Etienne?
No, not at all. Travis is our guy, and Tank had a good game. It's just the way games go, and happy for Tank. Had great for the offensive line, obviously, in some of those situations there, but no, Travis is our guy, and Tank had a good game today though.
So I just wanted to make sure to bring that one up because, I don't know, maybe Peterson was using coach speak, and you're kidding yourself if you don't think that every NFL coach lies during press conferences. So maybe Peterson was just kind of trying to protect Travis Etienne a little bit and give him confidence during this presser, as opposed to coming out and saying, oh, yeah, Tank Bigsby's awesome. He's going to be our starter moving forward, because that might not help Etienne's confidence. So maybe that's the case, but I think that Doug is telling the truth here. I think that Travis Etienne is going to remain Jacksonville's unquestioned starter and lead the team in snaps and touches in most weeks. And Peterson said on Monday that part of the reason Tank got kind of an extended workload in the second half is because Etienne dinged his shoulder in the first half. And so they were just being cautious with him. And so obviously it's very exciting for Tank that he's playing so well, especially considering his rookie campaign. But we just got to slow down a little bit on the hype as it relates to Travis Etienne, because Etienne himself is still a dynamic ball carrier, and I think that he's going to run into form sooner than later as well. So this last clip is Doug Peterson talking Monday about Trayvon Walker, who had a career best day of his own with 3 sacks.
Today, what did you feel about it, and how has he sort of progressed since you guys got him in here in 22?
Yeah, I think you're really seeing his power, his length, speed, and athleticism, who he is as a player. I think this scheme benefits him. He's embraced and really kind of bought into Ryan's philosophy and scheme and attack style, and he's just continues to improve each week, and just like where he's at. I mean, he had a really good game yesterday. Probably could have had a 4th sack, in there, maybe a 5th sack in there, but that's just him, and that's what I see during the week, how he prepares during the week, and it's carrying over, to the game, and it did yesterday.
All right, to finish up our show and tell segment, we've just got a couple of graphics and tweets and stuff. So this first one on the screen for the stream viewers is just a chart showing NFL running backs this season in terms of tackles avoided per carry and yards after contacts per carry. And Tank Bigsby is in the upper right-hand corner. Is that the second quadrant? I don't know. Scratch that. But Tank Bigsby is like blowing everyone out of the water in terms of, again, tackles avoided per carry and yards after contacts per carry. He's also blowing everyone out of the water in next-gen stats is rushing yards over expected per attempt. You can see here that Tank has 4.19 rushing yards over expected per attempt, and the next closest player is Derrick Henry with 2.49. So Tank almost twice as many rushing yards over expected per carry. He also leads all NFL players, including Lamar Jackson and all quarterbacks, in yards per carry with 8.0 this season. And so Tank definitely deserves all of his flowers. He's played lights out this year. Next one is just 2 tweets, one from Austin Gale saying, highest yards per route run average for rookie wide receivers in weeks 1 through 5 since at least 2000. 1, Greg Jennings at 3.28 yards per route run. 2, Jamar Chase at 2.98 yards per route run. And 3, Brian Thomas Jr. at 2.78 yards per route run. So again, Brian Thomas Jr. ranks 3rd among all rookie wide receivers since at least 2000 in yards per route run in weeks 1 through 5 of his rookie year. So amazing start for BTJ. There's not really a perfect receiver stat out there, but probably the best one is yards per route run, just because it kind of measures production on a, I don't know, playing time basis. So, and then this other tweet is from Chad Ochocinco just saying, I need a Brian Thomas Jr. jersey because the world needs to know his name outside of Jacksonville. Salute emoji. So salute right back at you, Ochocinco. And yeah, so that was our show and tell segment. Now it's time for chat therapy. If anyone has any comments, questions, concerns, I see there's 212 of you watching this live. So hit me up with anything that's on your mind. Reedy said on YouTube, this is the happiest I've been on a Tuesday for a while. Yeah, honestly, I agree. Usually I feel like in years past, I've done a good job of not letting the Jags affect my mood too much. But working at the local radio station, that's the flagship station for the team, whenever the team loses, it's usually a little bit of a bummer around the office. So it's definitely good vibes. And even though we did kind of get ahead of ourselves today with previewing the Bears game with Taylor, yeah, don't get too ahead of ourselves because it feels good to have a victory Tuesday and a victory week. So, yeah. No other comments right now, but I'll hang out for another minute or two. I had 2 things I wanted to say. The first is that someone came up to me outside Publix yesterday and said, hey, you're that guy from YouTube. And I said, yeah. And it was the first time that anyone came up to me in public and recognized me. So that was pretty cool. But I feel really bad because I didn't ask the guy what his name was, or at least like what his social media tag is, so that I can see if he's commenting. So my guy that introduced himself to me yesterday at Publix, comment, let me know who you are, because I feel bad I didn't get your name. What was the other thing I want to say? Oh, I want to try to figure out a way to bring people on live, like whether it's a phone call, maybe voicemails. But is there a way to like bring on people live, almost on like Twitter/X, the way that you can just do spaces and have people hop on and contribute super easily? Because I like reading y'all's comments and responding to them and stuff, but I feel like it could be more engaging if we actually talk to each other, and that could be cool. And so if anyone has any ideas for that, I mean, I can do the research myself too, of course, but I figure this is a good group of people to ask. So comment below or DM me on Twitter or whatever if you have any good ideas to just make the chat therapy section more better. Reedy said, let's hope the trip to London does not affect the production from BTJ. As he said, it's his first time overseas. I didn't know that, actually. Good pickup that it'll be Brian's first overseas trip. But, yeah, he's amazing. I mean, it's Brian Thomas Jr. Come on. He's going to be sick. He's going to post over 100 yards in each game from here on out until he retires 15 years later and is immediately inducted into the pride of the Jaguars. So I'm not too worried about him. I guess that'll do it. Thought that was a fun conversation with Taylor. Happy victory week to all. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. We'll be back on Thursday at 9:04 a.m. Eastern with Mia O'Brien to talk more about Bears versus Jaguars. Not sure exactly what we're going to dive into specifically. Maybe it'll be more Caleb Williams talk, because that is not going to get old anytime soon, or at least it's going to be around for a while because he's legit. Maybe we'll just keep talking about Brian Thomas Jr. and how good he is. But you'll have to tune in on Thursday to figure it out. So thanks again for joining. We will see you next time.
Down is brought to you by Injury Care Centers. Same-day injury care, no ER lines.